After a few days rest before and after Easter, I am back on site for the end of the week, and it will probably just be me, as it looks like the building team are going to now be here at the start of next week. And with the weather due to be warm and sunny for a few days, just like it is today, it's a great opportunity to do some wall work and some window work that I've wanted to do, but I'll only be able to get onto that if I'm successful with some initial repair work. So when I arrived on Wednesday morning, that was going to be the priority for the day. And while opening up, I didn't have too many other checks to do, having dropped into the house briefly after the Easter church service on the Monday. The importance of the repairs was that they were on the generator, the starter cord of which I had snapped 10 days earlier, and after my inquisitiveness got the better of me last week, I now also needed to reset the spring in the starter mechanism after I had opened it up to see if I could tighten it. First up, I cut out the old cord, which I had actually retied last week, but which I had now decided to replace with a newer cord. I then managed to accidentally release the spring, which I had recoiled last week, a mistake I was to repeat later on. A very good YouTube video explaining what I had to do had said that this was not something to do when you were short on time and your patience was running low. And this proved to be just about right. No! Oh no! I then had some repeated problems getting the cord and spring settings right, and decided it was time for some lunch and to re-watch the YouTube video explainer. Having identified my errors, I returned to the task with slightly more confidence. And after it looked like things were now set up correctly, it was time for the next moment of truth. And with the generator working, I could now do the next repairs I wanted to do. Started with cutting some tubes for a DIY solution relating to the tent. The tent took a bit of a battering in the recent winds, and various sheets and pegs needed sorting, and bits of the frame now needed a much stronger connection to the ground. All the tent work took longer than this clip might suggest. And when I had finished, it was time to head out for some other tasks off-site. With the generator working again, I could now get on with some of the work for which I would need power. And with it being a beautiful, warm, sunny morning, it was ideal for some outdoor stonework on the back wall. First, I needed to get some mortar ready. Just after which, there were a couple of very unexpected aerial visitors. With the mortar nearly ready, I headed to the back wall for some initial preparations on the section of the wall with the old integrated ceramic drain, which I wanted to take out and then fill the cavity with stones, ideally with stones that had come out of this wall during the earlier window work. I needed to do a bit of a cleanup around the cavity to check exactly what stones I might need to take out and what shapes and sizes I would need for the ones I would be putting in. Especially in this section where a more recent metal drain had been fixed using cement. With a better idea of what was going to be required, I started the setup for the next phase. With a quick coffee and snack break in between. And then I was back to the wall. This time armed with a power chisel and grinder brush to help clean loose stones and mortar away from the cavity. The final preparations involved clearing a wider space at the base so that I could put a good solid stone in at the bottom. And then it was stonework time, during which I wanted to find an appropriate balance between filling the cavity without leaving too obvious an edge, but not removing too many original stones and not spending too much time looking for perfect stones and just trying to use what was closer to hand, in the same way that I have seen Miguel and Haggy do it. With the initial mortar batch used up, it was time for some more mixing and a lunch break. Then I was back to the back wall, starting with a bit of tidying up of the morning's mortar work. To avoid having too obvious a straight line of new stones, I was having to remove some of the looser stones and reshape some of the bigger ones that I wanted to keep in place. And doing this by hand was much easier and more accurate than doing it with a power tool. Once I was out of mortar again, it was time for a drinks bake and some more mixing. Which this little fritillary butterfly was showing some interest in. Then it was back to the wall for the final afternoon session. After clearing some space so that I could get this bigger stone in, I then decided it wasn't quite the right fit, so a bit of a rethink was required. And when I was running out of time towards the top, I had to make do with some less than ideal options, but I can put in a couple of different line breaking stones on another day. With the mortar tidying done, I did some final tidying, cleaning up, and then I finished off for the day. On the last day of the week, it was another warm and sunny morning. I started by putting on some precautionary sun cream for my initial work outdoors. First, back on the wall for some tidying of the mortar, the overall workspace, and the temporary drain pipe. Next up, I want to do some work on the windows, or at least on the temporary covers that I've got in there. Just to make them slightly more secure, I want to put some of the brick boards that came off the shed into the opening just to close it off and make it a little more secure. So I'm going to need to make some mortar, clear all that up, and then make it level and then stack the brick boards. That's the idea anyway. For this window work, I decided not to spend too long setting up better working spaces either outside or inside, and to try and make do with what was in place, which did make some of the work a bit trickier than it might have been. When putting in the brick boards, I had planned on cutting some pieces to size, but I decided it'd be quicker and easier to fill in spaces between the full-size boards with some hollow bricks. This definitely made things look a bit ugly, but I decided I could live with this, seeing as it is only a temporary measure. For the top section, I needed some narrower boards, and I thought I might use some that were already broken, which led to a very ugly initial solution. That I considered during my lunch break. And upon my return, I decided some changes would be slightly better. Although certainly not the prettiest piece of work, I hope it will be slightly more robust than the previous solution. With a limited amount of mortar left, I decided to work on a smaller window, but this would mean working upstairs, which would require some additional one-man logistics, not least for lifting the mortar up. For the next mortar lift up, I thought I might do it all in one go, but it didn't look like either my arms or the pulley system had the necessary strength. So a bit of a reload was required. And that is the end of my work for this shorter than usual week and shorter than usual video. Well, it's been a pleasure to be back here in the warm sun after the Easter break, and I've done most of the things that I set out to do. First of all on the generator, then on the back wall, and then on the windows on this side today. And next week the builders will definitely be back on site, and the focus is going to be on phase 2 of the roof work. So please do tune in again to see how we get on.